She said she valued honesty above everything, so I told her the truth about my past to see if she'd leave. The detective slid the restraining order across the table, and I read my own address listed as the place I was now legally barred from entering. My apartment. My home of 6 years. The place where all my belongings still sat, including the laptop with 3 years of freelance design work and the external hard drive with my backup files. Quote, I said, my voice sounding distant and strange. Quote, Detective Nina Carver, 15 years with the Domestic Violence Unit according to the credentials she'd shown me, gave me the look I'd seen 1,000 times before. The look that said she'd heard every excuse, every justification, every denial. Mr. Reeves, your girlfriend filed a report this morning claiming you threatened her life. She has documentation of your criminal history, text messages that she says contain veiled threats, and a witness who heard you make statements about harming her. The judge issued this emergency protective order based on the totality of circumstances. You're lucky you're not in custody right now. I'd been living a quiet life in Portland for 8 years when I met Lydia Ashford at a community art show in the Pearl District. I was there showing some of my graphic design work, freelance stuff I did for local businesses, nothing fancy but enough to pay bills and keep me stable. She'd approached my booth with this huge smile, asking intelligent questions about my process, about the symbolism in a poster series I'd done for a nonprofit. She was wearing a cream-colored dress and had her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look both professional and approachable. We talked for an hour, completely ignoring the other people trying to view my work, and when she asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime, I said yes before I could overthink it. That was 5 months ago. 5 months of what I'd thought was the healthiest relationship I'd ever had. Lydia worked in nonprofit administration, managing grants for an organization that supported domestic violence survivors. She talked constantly about the importance of healthy relationships, about communication and boundaries and honesty. Quote 3, she'd said on our third date, looking at me with those intense green eyes, I can forgive almost anything if someone is honest with me. It's the lies that destroy trust, that make relationships impossible. I'd rather hear a difficult truth than live with a comfortable lie. I'd nodded, thinking about the truth I wasn't telling her. The truth that sat in my past, like a landmine I'd been carefully stepping around for 8 years. At the time, I told myself I'd tell her eventually, when things got more serious, when I knew she really cared about me, when I was sure she'd understand. The thing about having a criminal record is that you become an expert at strategic omission. You learn which questions to deflect, which conversations to redirect, which parts of your history to simply never mention. You become fluent in the language of careful editing, of telling true stories with all the dangerous parts removed. I'd gotten good at it over the years, good enough that most people never suspected there were gaps in my narrative. But with Lydia, the omissions felt heavier. She talked about honesty like it was a religion, like transparency was the foundation of everything good, and I was sitting across from her at dinners and coffee shops and her apartment, nodding along while hiding the biggest truth about myself. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I knew what happened when people found out. I'd lost jobs, friendships, relationships. I'd watched people's faces change the moment they learned, watched them mentally recalculate everything they thought they knew about me. 3 months into our relationship, Lydia invited me to her apartment for dinner. She'd cooked this elaborate meal, set the table with candles and wine, and halfway through dessert, she reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, she said. Simple, direct, no hesitation. I know it's fast, but I'm sure. I love who you are, how you make me feel, the life I can see us building together. And I need you to know that you can tell me anything. Anything at all. I meant what I said about honesty. There's nothing you could tell me that would make me stop loving you as long as you're honest with me. The wine tasted sour suddenly. My throat felt tight. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. But there's something I need to tell you. Something about my past that I should have mentioned before now. She squeezed my hand, her expression open and encouraging. Okay, I'm listening. I took a breath, let it out slowly. 10 years ago, when I was 23, I was convicted of assault. I served 18 months in county jail and 3 years of probation. It's been 8 years since I completed my sentence, and I haven't had any legal trouble since then. But it's on my record. It's part of my history, and I should have told you sooner. The silence that followed felt endless. Lydia's expression didn't change immediately, which somehow made it worse. She just sat there, still holding my hand, processing. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. "Tell me what happened. All of it." So I did. Told her about the bar fight that had spiraled out of control, about the guy who'd been harassing a woman and wouldn't stop when I intervened, about the moment when his friends jumped in and everything became chaos, about how I'd broken the first guy's jaw and given another one a concussion, about how self-defense became complicated when you're the one still standing and the other guys are on the ground, about the prosecutor who painted me as an aggressor, the plea deal my public defender convinced me to take, the months in county jail surrounded by people who'd made much worse mistakes, about rebuilding my life afterward, the freelance design work I'd taught myself while inside, the 8 years of proving I was more than the worst thing I'd ever done. Lydia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for another long moment. Then she squeezed my hand again. "Thank you for telling me. I know that wasn't easy. You're not upset. I'm processing. This is significant information. But I appreciate your honesty, and I meant what I said. I can work with truth. It's dishonesty that I can't accept. The fact that you told me, that you trusted me with this, that matters." We talked for another 2 hours that night. She asked careful questions about my time inside, about my probation, about how it had affected my life since. I answered as honestly as I could, feeling a strange mix of relief and vulnerability. When I finally left her apartment around midnight, I felt lighter than I had in months, like I could breathe fully for the first time since we'd met. She'd accepted me, all of me, the parts I was proud of and the parts I wished I could erase. 2 days later, she asked me to move in with her. "I've been thinking about it anyway," she said over coffee at our favorite place downtown. "And after our conversation, I feel even more sure. You've built an incredible life after facing serious obstacles. You're someone who took responsibility and changed. That's exactly the kind of person I want to build a future with." I should have questioned the timing, should have wondered why she was suddenly rushing things after learning about my criminal history. But I was so relieved by her acceptance, so grateful she hadn't run, that I said yes, gave up my apartment, moved my stuff into her place in Northwest Portland, settled into what I thought was the beginning of something real. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks after I moved in. Lydia was on her laptop at the kitchen table when I came out of the shower, and she closed it quickly when she saw me. Not suspicious on its own, but combined with her expression, something felt off. I asked, toweling my hair. I nodded, let it go, told myself I was being paranoid. But over the next few days, I noticed her being protective of her phone, of her laptop, of her work in ways she hadn't been before. She'd get text messages and step into another room to respond. She'd close browser tabs when I walked past. Small things, individually meaningless, but they accumulated into a pattern that made my stomach tighten. One morning, I woke up early and found her in the living room with her laptop, looking at what appeared to be court documents. When she noticed me, she closed the screen immediately. "Hey, didn't hear you get up. What are you looking at?" "Work. A case I'm reviewing for a grant application." "Why?" "Just curious. You seem stressed lately." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Quote, 23. I wanted to believe her, tried to push down the growing sense that something had shifted between us. But the feeling persisted, grew stronger as the weeks passed. She started asking strange questions, and I answered honestly, because that was the deal we'd made. Honesty above everything. But each question felt like she was probing for something, testing the boundaries of what I'd told her. 2 months after I moved in, I came home from a client meeting to find Lydia on the phone in the bedroom, speaking in a low, urgent voice. I heard fragments through the door. My blood went cold. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to her discuss my criminal history with someone. When she emerged from the bedroom 5 minutes later, I was sitting on the couch trying to look casual. Quote, 28. Her voice was bright, normal, like she hadn't just been sharing my past with a stranger. Fine. Who were you talking to? Client. Nothing important. The lie sat between us like something tangible. That night, after she fell asleep, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through her laptop, found it unlocked in the living room, still open to the browser she'd been using. I told myself I just needed to understand what was happening, that the knot of anxiety in my chest was worth investigating. What I found made my hands shake. Email chains with someone named Teresa Manning, who according to the signature was an attorney with the Clark County District Attorney's Office in Washington, just across the river. The emails discussed my case in detail, my conviction, my sentence, the specifics of the assault. But more than that, they discussed me, my current life, my freelance work, my clients. Quote 31. One email read, quote 32. I scrolled through dozens of emails, saw Lydia providing detailed information about my daily routines, my clients, my movements, saw her offering to document any behavior she deemed concerning, saw her painting herself as someone concerned about public safety, someone bravely maintaining a relationship with a violent offender to keep eyes on him. I sat in the dark living room with her laptop open, reading her description of me as a potential threat to the community, saw her twist conversations we'd had, reframe innocent moments into concerning patterns. Subject becomes agitated when questioned about his past. That had been one conversation where I'd gotten frustrated explaining for the third time that I'd never been violent since my conviction. Subject has difficulty maintaining employment. I was a freelancer. That's how freelancing worked. Quote 35. I'd designed a website for Lydia's organization and done logo work for 2 other charities. She'd been the one to connect me with those clients. My phone vibrated. A text from my friend Dominic, who worked in IT security. Dude, weird question. Did you give someone permission to access your email? Seeing some login attempts from an IP address that traces back to a law firm in Vancouver, Washington. My stomach dropped further. I checked my email account, saw the login history, multiple access points from locations I'd never been, times when I'd been asleep or at meetings. Someone had been reading my emails. My messages with clients, with friends, with my parole officer from years ago during my monthly check-ins that had ended 3 years ago. I confronted Lydia the next morning over coffee, told her I knew about the emails to the DA's office, about someone accessing my accounts, watched her face cycle through expressions, surprise to anger to something that looked like calculation before settling on hurt. Quote 37. Quote 38. She set down her coffee cup carefully. Quote 39. The way she said it, so calm and clinical, made something click into place. This wasn't confusion or fear. This was deliberate. You planned this. From the beginning. You wanted me to tell you about my past so you could use it. She stood up, grabbed her phone. I think you should leave. Go stay somewhere else for a few days while we both cool down. I'll text you when I'm ready to talk. This is my home. I pay half the rent. Her expression hardened. Actually, the lease is in my name. You're not on it. You have no legal right to be here if I don't want you here. And right now, with you acting threatening and unstable, I don't feel safe with you in my home. I haven't threatened you. I haven't done anything except ask you about the emails. She was already texting someone. I'm documenting this. Your aggressive tone, your refusal to leave when asked, your violation of my privacy, all of it. I grabbed my wallet and keys, feeling like I was moving underwater. Fine, I'll go, but this isn't over. We need to actually talk about this. She didn't respond, just kept typing on her phone. I left, drove to Dominic's apartment across town and spent the next 6 hours trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Dominic listened to the whole story, his expression getting darker as I talked. Bro, this sounds like she's setting you up for something. The emails to the prosecutor, accessing your accounts, now kicking you out and documenting your reaction. What's the endgame here? I don't know, but I need to get my stuff from her apartment. My laptop, my external drives, all my work equipment is there. Don't go alone, seriously. If she's building some kind of case against you, you need witnesses for every interaction. We went together that evening. I'd texted Lydia multiple times asking when I could come get my belongings. She'd responded with one message. Don't come to my apartment. I'll have your things sent to you. When we arrived, she didn't answer the door. I could hear movement inside, could see lights on. I used my key. It didn't work. She'd changed the locks. Dominic filmed me trying the door, documented the timestamp, my calm demeanor. I said to the camera, quote, 52. No response from inside. We called the non-emergency police line, explained the situation to the dispatcher. Quote, 53. The dispatcher sounded tired. Quote, 54. Quote, 55. Quote, 56. The officer who showed up 20 minutes later was young, bored, clearly viewing this as a waste of his time. Officer Stevens, according to his badge. He knocked on Lydia's door, got no response, made notes on a report that he handed me a copy of. Keep this. If you sue for your property, this documents that you attempted to retrieve it. That's the best I can do. That night, sleeping on Dominic's couch, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Stop harassing her. She's scared and you need to back off, or there will be consequences. I screenshotted it, sent it to Dominic. Who is this? Someone who cares about her safety. Leave her alone. I didn't respond. Went to bed feeling like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 36 text messages. My phone had blown up overnight. I scrolled through the messages with increasing horror. Former clients, friends, acquaintances, all asking variations of the same question. Is this true? There was a link. Someone had created a blog post titled, Convicted Violent Offender Working with Vulnerable Populations. The post detailed my assault conviction, included copies of court documents, listed the nonprofit organizations I'd done design work for, and raised questions about whether someone with my history should have access to vulnerable communities. It didn't mention Lydia. Didn't explicitly accuse me of anything current. Just laid out the facts in a way that made me look dangerous. Made it look like I'd been hiding my past and taking advantage of organizations that worked with abuse survivors. The post had been shared across multiple social media platforms, tagged several of my clients. Someone had even sent it to the Portland Design Community Facebook group, where I'd been an active member for years. My phone rang. A client, Amy Voss from Northwest Family Services, she said, her voice tight. 3 more clients called that morning, all saying the same thing. Sorry, but we have to protect our organizations. Sorry, but this creates liability issues. Sorry, but we can't be associated with someone with a violent criminal history. By noon, I'd lost 5 contracts. Contracts that represented 70% of my income. My professional reputation, built carefully over 8 years, was imploding in real time. Dominic helped me draft a response, a statement explaining my history, my rehabilitation, the fact that I'd always been honest with clients about my past. We posted it on my website, on my professional social media. It got 32 responses, 3 of them supportive. The rest ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. Once violent, always violent. These nonprofits trusted you, and you betrayed them. You should be in prison, not working with vulnerable populations. I called my old public defender, Nathan Cross, who'd moved into private practice, explained the situation. He listened quietly, then sighed. I spent the next week documenting and trying to salvage my business. Reached out to current clients who hadn't terminated contracts yet, assured them I was the same person they'd hired, that nothing about me had changed. Some stuck with me, most didn't. The financial reality was hitting hard. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck as a freelancer, and losing 70% of my income meant I couldn't pay my bills. Couldn't afford my car payment, my health insurance, the business software subscriptions I needed to work. Then, the restraining order arrived. Detective Carver had called me to come to the station, made it sound like they needed a statement for my own protection. Instead, she served me with a protective order that banned me from my own apartment, from contacting Lydia, from coming within 500 feet of her or her workplace. Detective Carver said, watching my face, quote, 76, quote, 77. I pulled out my phone, started scrolling through the conversation with Lydia, found the texts I'd sent asking about my belongings. They were normal, frustrated, but not threatening. She's lying. Look at these. I never said anything about hurting her. Detective Carver looked at the messages, her expression skeptical. She showed me different messages. From a different number, she says you've been texting her from. I don't have another number. This is my only phone. She has screenshots, unless you're saying she fabricated them? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. This woman has been systematically destroying my life. She reported me to prosecutors. Someone accessed my email accounts illegally. She created a blog exposing my past to my clients. Now she's claiming I threatened her with fake screenshots. This is a setup. The detective leaned back in her chair. I could see her making calculations, deciding whether I was a genuine victim or a manipulative abuser playing the victim card. Mr. Reeves, I've worked domestic violence cases for 15 years. I've heard every excuse, every explanation. The thing is, you have a history of violence. You were convicted of assault. That's a fact. And this woman works with domestic violence survivors professionally. She knows the warning signs, knows the patterns. From where I sit, this looks like a man with a violent past who's escalating with a new partner. She set this up. From the beginning, she targeted me specifically because of my past, got me to tell her everything, then used it to destroy me. Why would I threaten someone who has all this power over me? Why would I give her ammunition like that? Because abusers escalate when they lose control. Because you're angry about being exposed. Because violence is your pattern when you don't get what you want. The logic was circular. Impossible to escape. Everything I said to defend myself could be reframed as manipulation. Every piece of evidence I provided could be dismissed as the actions of someone trying to cover their tracks. I was guilty because I had once been guilty, and no amount of rehabilitation could erase that fundamental assumption. Can I at least get my belongings from the apartment? Not without violating the protective order. You can file in civil court to have property returned, but you can't go near the residence. I left the police station feeling more trapped than I'd felt even in county jail. At least in jail, I'd known the rules, knew when my sentence would end. This felt endless, an impossible situation where the truth didn't matter because my past had already written the narrative. Nathan Cross, my attorney, was more helpful than the detective. He filed an emergency motion to modify the restraining order to allow me to retrieve my property under police supervision. The hearing was set for 10 days out. Quote 88, I said. Quote 89. Quote 90. I borrowed Dominic's laptop, tried to reconstruct files I needed from cloud backups, reached out to the few clients who'd stuck with me, explained I was having equipment issues, but would deliver their projects on time. Spent every spare moment trying to figure out what Lydia's endgame was. Why destroy someone's life like this? What did she gain? Dominic had theories. The answer came 5 days before my court hearing. An email from Teresa Manning, the prosecutor Lydia had been corresponding with. I read the email 3 times, trying to understand what she was asking. Called Nathan Cross immediately. Quote 95. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Quote 96. He called back 2 hours later. Quote 97. My blood went cold. Quote 98. Quote 99. Quote 100. Quote 101. We met with FBI agent Lawrence Kim 2 days later. He was mid-50s, looked tired, and listened to our explanation with an expression that gave nothing away. Nathan had prepared a timeline of events, copies of all the emails between Lydia and Manning, the blog post, the restraining order, everything. Quote 102. Agent Kim said when we finished. Quote 103. Quote 104. Agent Kim reviewed the documents again. Quote 105. Quote Norosoex. Agent Kim was quiet. Quote 107. He trailed off, something clicking into place behind his eyes. Quote 108. Nathan finished. Quote 109. Agent Kim stood up. Quote 110. The next week was agony, waiting, wondering if the FBI believed us or if Lydia had convinced them I was a criminal. I stayed at Dominic's, barely sleeping, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Then Nathan called. The FBI wants to meet with you. They've uncovered some things. We met at the FBI field office downtown. Agent Kim was there, along with 2 other agents, and Teresa Manning, the prosecutor. Manning looked uncomfortable, like she'd been called to the principal's office. Mr. Reeves, Agent Kim began, we've conducted a thorough review of our investigation and Ms. Ashford's involvement. We've found significant evidence that she deliberately misled our task force, manipulated evidence, and fabricated statements to implicate you in criminal activity you had no involvement in. We've also discovered that she was instrumental in the grant fraud at her nonprofit and was attempting to use our investigation as cover while she framed you as the perpetrator. The relief was so intense I felt dizzy. So I'm cleared? You were never actually under investigation. But yes, we're formally notifying you that you are not a suspect in any criminal activity. Additionally, Ms. Ashford is now facing charges for obstruction of justice, fraud, and making false statements to federal investigators. Prosecutor Manning's office is also facing serious questions about the ethics of her communication with Ms. Ashford while Ms. Ashford was engaged in a relationship with someone she was providing information about. Teresa Manning looked miserable. I apologize, Mr. Reeves. I should have maintained better boundaries. When Ms. Ashford approached me with concerns about someone with a violent history working with vulnerable populations, I didn't adequately question her motives or verify her information. I allowed her to weaponize my office against you. I take full responsibility. It wasn't enough, wasn't close to enough, but it was something. What about the restraining order? My belongings? My destroyed reputation? Nathan jumped in. We're filing motions to dissolve the restraining order immediately, to return all property, and we're considering civil action against Ms. Ashford for defamation and damages. There's one more thing, Agent Kim said. He slid a folder across the table. When we executed a search warrant on Ms. Ashford's apartment, we found extensive files on multiple men, all with criminal histories, all people she'd pursued relationships with. You're the fourth person in 3 years she's done this to. The others were too scared or too broke to fight back. She'd target men with past convictions, gain their trust, get them to disclose their histories, then systematically destroy their lives while positioning herself as the concerned citizen protecting the community. I opened the folder, saw photographs of 3 other men, read case summaries of how she'd destroyed their lives. One had lost custody of his daughter, one had been deported, one had attempted suicide. I asked. Over the next month, the truth came out slowly. News articles about Lydia's arrest for fraud and obstruction, my former clients reaching out to apologize, some offering to rehire me. The blog post taken down, replaced with a statement from the FBI clarifying that the information had been posted as part of a malicious campaign. The restraining order dissolved. My belongings returned. I stood in what had been our apartment, packing up my equipment and clothes, and felt no sense of victory, just exhaustion. Dominic helped me move into a new studio apartment in Southeast Portland, helped me set up my office, get my business running again. Some clients came back, others didn't. My reputation was damaged in ways that would take years to fully repair. 3 months after Lydia's arrest, I got a call from one of the other men she'd targeted, Anthony Diaz, who'd been deported back to Mexico after she reported him to immigration. He'd found my information through the FBI and wanted to talk. Quote, 125. He said over the phone, his English accented but clear. Quote, 126. Quote, 127. I said. Quote, 128. Quote, 129. We talked for an hour, compared notes, found the same patterns. She'd targeted men who were already marginalized, who had pasts they were ashamed of, who were trying to rebuild their lives, offered them acceptance and love in exchange for vulnerability, then weaponized that vulnerability to destroy them. I'm testifying at her trial, Anthony said. The FBI got my deportation overturned, helped me get back. I want to make sure she can't do this to anyone else. I'll testify too, I said. The trial was 6 months later. Lydia Ashford, charged with federal fraud, obstruction of justice, making false statements to federal investigators, and multiple counts of harassment and stalking under Oregon law. I sat in the courtroom with Anthony and the other 2 men she'd targeted, watched her sit at the defense table in a conservative suit, looking small and victimized. Her attorney tried to paint her as a crusader for justice who'd gotten too involved in protecting vulnerable communities, tried to suggest that her targets were violent men who'd manipulated her, but the evidence was overwhelming. The files she'd kept on us, the emails planning her attacks, the fabricated screenshots, the timeline showing how she'd systematically pursued, isolated, and destroyed each of us. I testified for 3 hours, told the jury about how she'd emphasized honesty, how she'd made me believe I could trust her with my worst truths, told them about watching my life implode in real time, told them about the months of not knowing if I'd end up in prison for crimes I didn't commit. Anthony testified about being separated from his daughter for a year, about missing her 7th birthday, about the nightmares he still had about ICE raids. The other men told similar stories, lives destroyed, families torn apart, careers ended, all because one woman had figured out how to weaponize the justice system against people who were already vulnerable. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, found her guilty on all counts. At sentencing 2 months later, the judge gave her 8 years in federal prison. Quote 133, the judge said, quote, 134. I walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sunshine, felt something close to peace for the first time in a year, not happiness, not victory, just the quiet knowledge that the nightmare was finally over. Dominic was waiting on the courthouse steps. I said, quote, 137, quote, 138, quote, 139, quote, 140. He agreed. We walked toward the parking garage and my phone buzzed. A text from Amy Voss, the client who'd dropped me a year ago. I saw the news about the verdict. I owe you an apology. Northwest Family Services would like to talk about bringing you back on for several projects if you're interested. I looked at the message for a long time. Could have responded immediately, eager to rebuild my client list. Could have said yes without hesitation. Instead, I typed, "Thanks for reaching out. I'll need to think about it and get back to you. I'm being careful about who I work with these days." Sent it before I could second-guess myself. "Good response," Dominic said, reading over my shoulder. "You don't owe anyone immediate forgiveness." Lydia said honesty was everything, I said. That she could forgive anything if someone was honest with her. Turns out what she really meant was that she wanted ammunition, that she valued honesty because it gave her power over people. "Most people aren't like that, though," Dominic said. "Most people actually mean it when they say they want honesty." Maybe, but I'm going to be a lot more careful about who I trust with the truth. Some things deserve to be protected, even from people who claim to want total honesty. We got in the car and drove through Portland's evening traffic. I thought about everything I'd lost and everything I'd learned. Thought about the 3 other men whose lives had been destroyed before mine. Thought about the non-profit organizations that had been damaged by Lydia's fraud. Thought about Detective Carver, who'd looked at me and seen only a violent offender, never questioning why a man with 8 years of clean living would suddenly become threatening. The justice system had eventually worked, but slowly, reluctantly, only after people with power like Agent Kim and Nathan Cross had forced it to see the truth. For every person like me who had the resources and luck to fight back, how many others were sitting in the position I'd been in a year ago? Facing accusations they couldn't disprove, losing everything because someone with credibility had decided to destroy them? 6 months later, I was sitting in my studio apartment working on a website design when I got a call from Nathan Cross. Quote, 150, quote, 151, quote, 152, quote, 153, quote, 154. I thought about Anthony on the phone, asking if I'd believed her at the beginning. Remembered the relief in his voice when I said yes, I had. Being believed mattered. Being vindicated mattered. But more than that, understanding that you weren't uniquely stupid or weak for falling for the manipulation, that other people had been fooled too, that freed something inside that had been locked tight with shame. "Thanks for telling me," I said. I needed to hear that. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.